Silly season madness. Is it truly a thing in real estate where everything just goes bananas? We've brought in Amelia from realestate.com.au to tell us what the true facts are. Stay tuned.
Well, good morning.
Morning. Hi.
Thanks for joining us this morning, Amelia.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. And to our viewers, introducing Amelia Steinmetz from realestate.com. She is our account rep here at Novak, who has all of the facts, all of the figures, and all of the inside knowledge of properties listed around the Northern Beaches and the Greater Sydney area. Amelia, you did join us a couple of months ago, or what feels like a couple of months ago now. To give our viewers a bit of a recap, what were we talking about then?
Yeah, sure. So last time I was here, we were talking about all things summer madness. So we're talking about the activity that we see on our site during the summer period and why you should list your property during the summer months, knowing that activity goes wild. And that's the main time that we see people looking both for properties for rent and also properties to purchase.
Beautiful. And so since then, we're now in the peak summer period. We're in the middle of summer. Look, I know Wolf's mentioned stuff from our point of view, but from your point of view, since we last spoke, has it been a summer of madness? Have properties, inquiries listed sky high? What's been happening, Amelia?
Yeah, I did have a look at a couple of the numbers and I really focused on the Northern Beaches as well. And what we've seen so far is that year on year, we've actually seen more properties hit the market for sales compared to last year. And the average sold price on the Northern Beaches compared to this time last year is up by quite a lot. So last year it was $1.82 million. And this time, so this year from December until Jan 15th, it was $1.92 million. So there's a lot of activity happening. The average sold price is up and we're expecting the rest of summer to be just as busy in terms of listings, but also activity.
What a great trajectory. I mean, just year on year, a growth like that to just really start. I mean, we bottomed out 2 years ago and we've really just started to pick ourselves right up. That's a great trajectory. Do you think, Amelia, that the incredibly low levels of stock that are currently available on the market has helped to significantly increase that sold price?
Yeah, definitely. So there's obviously been less stock on the market right now. And what we've seen in previous years is that sort of from mid-January, that's when a lot of the stock do come onto the market. But because there's been that sort of lack of supply, that's what's sort of driven up that sold price. And as we said, we've seen a result of a higher average sold price on the Northern Beaches compared to last year. And that's basically people sort of snatching up the stock that is available. So it's really exciting to see that there's a lot of buyer activity at the moment on the Northern Beaches.
I've got a question. As an owner, and if I was listing my property for sale, what are the key dates to work towards? Because it seems like you were saying a lot of the stock starts to come back at a similar time. Obviously, I think agents have quite a large impact on that. Is it Jan 15th? Is it Australia Day? End of January, start of February? Is there a particular day that realestate.com goes, wow, we're back in business? This is when everyone's back to work almost?
Based on the numbers, it is sort of from the 15th of January, we do see that new stock hit the market. But when I was last on your morning live minutes, I was actually saying that December's a really good time to list your property because we find that the majority of people that are looking in December then go on to inquire on the property in January. So people sort of browse in December and then they start making moves in January. But to answer your question, it definitely seems that the majority of the stock does come on in the summer months, sort of from that mid-January period. And I think that's normally when people start to come back to work and people have returned from holidays and they're trying to get back into the swing of things. But I think traditionally when we all sort of thought that stock would come back on after Australia Day, that sort of changed and stock's coming on earlier than that now.
Yeah, okay. So I guess this is kind of the week where it happens then, we're pretty much there now. So
Yeah.
I think with the buyer, it's exciting, right? There's going to be a little bit more stock coming in. As an agent, if you've got existing campaigns, you just need to be proactive in making sure they're refreshed maybe,
Yeah.
and looking 10 out of 10 to compete with some new properties coming into the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing we've seen as well, which I loved, and obviously we don't have the stats from this year just yet, but looking at last summer. So last summer we saw a huge amount of were about 65 email inquiries per property. And that compared to the rest of the year, so the rest of 2023, the average views on a property was 4,000 and the inquiries were about 50% less than what I've just mentioned. So there's obviously summer's a really busy time, especially on the northern beaches, for people to be making moves on property, engaging with property. So as you said, Billy, it could be a great time to sort of change the photos around, but make sure your property is looking really fresh, as we expect to see a number of eyeballs coming to your listings.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we've certainly noticed that as agents. We didn't close our doors over that Christmas New Year period, and the level of inquiry that came through on each property, regardless of whether it was a $17 million listing or an entry-level $750,000 apartment, the inquiry levels just went gangbusters.
Yeah.
We seriously didn't sleep. We stayed true to our motto. We never sleep 24/7. We were answering those inquiries day in, day out, at any time of the day as well.
And it did sort of trickle through to open home numbers as well.
Yeah.
That's always a really good measure for us as an agent as to where a property is sitting in the market, and also the direction in which we're heading in. Because when you're getting 10, 15, 20 groups through an open home, it doesn't matter what stage in the property cycle we're in, it's always a really good indication that there's a lot of buyers around. There's competition there, and the sentiment's positive. There's people that are out there making moves, making offers. So that was always really, really important for us to sort of recognize that every open home we were conducting, there was at least 2 handfuls of groups, families coming through.
Yeah, whereas previously, 4 weeks prior to that, we might not have seen many people come through the door at all. And I think that's just, like we said, the low stock numbers coupled with what is a really madness time in the world of real estate.
Yeah, and we see the same with rentals as well. So we know that the summer period's a really busy time for rental properties. People trying to get into a rental before the school starts, trying to get into school zones. But one thing that I found fascinating comparing year on year for summer, especially on the northern beaches, is that there's less stock coming to market. So I think we're going to see a trend this year that the rental demand remains quite high. But the average weekly rental last summer was $942 per week, versus to date this summer is $1,065 per week on the northern beaches.
Wow.
So
Gosh, that's such a huge increase.
Is that northern beaches?
that's northern beaches specifically, yeah.
Wow.
So that's having a look at that demand, especially in your market, over about $120 per week in terms of activity for people looking at rental properties, which is insane.
Gosh,
It's a big catch up.
it's isn't it? Seriously, I mean, I'm kind of lost for words at the moment, but rental prices have increased. We've got an increase in the average or median sold price as well. So things do seem to be tracking really well in the world of real estate. What do you think, Amelia, the rest of 2024 has to offer?
Look, we've got a couple of things that we think will happen in 2024, but of course, the experts have got it wrong before. But what we're predicting, especially across Sydney, is a slow rate of growth, but still a growth this year. So last year, Sydney actually increased price growth by about 8%, and we're expecting between sort of 2 and 5% for this year. But there's a number of factors that are impacting this, and that's the record net overseas migration. So a lot of people moving to Australia. We've just talked about the high rental demand, which is also going to play a factor. Low unemployment, home equity gains. So I'll just touch on that. So before COVID, we obviously saw a huge impact in terms of what COVID did in terms of property prices. So prices actually increased by about 36% since 2020. So when I say home equity gains, that's people sort of cashing in that may have purchased property before that time and moving on to the next property. And then, of course, we're going to see later this year changes to the commencement of the stage 3 tax cuts. So we're going to see, I think, increased demand for that higher price property market. And one of the reasons why I think the price growth of 8% last year happened was because a lot of people that were borrowing last year were people that had a very low LVR. So for those that are listening along, that means that the lender to mortgage ratio type thing. So you might purchase a property and 80% of it might be mortgaged and 20% of it might be cash. But last year we actually saw an increase of people that were purchasing with an LVR less than 60%. So that means 40% cash. And that means they were sort of unaffected by those consecutive interest rate rises that we had. And we expect that to continue this year. So I think we're going to see more people purchasing that have a huge amount of equity and borrowing less. So they're sort of less impacted by those interest rate rises. And therefore, we think we're going to see still increase in property prices this year.
Wow, you are the economist, Amelia.
You said that so eloquently and with such confidence. Look, you should be in real estate, really, like selling. I'd buy something from you. No, I do think it's a really transitional time in the real estate industry. We've seen so much growth already across sales and rentals. And with that continuing on throughout the course of this year, I am really excited to see what happens.
Yeah, that's a brilliant insight though, and it's a great outlook to have from someone from realestate.com.au, the biggest property portal probably in the country. I'd say I'd love to know if there's anyone else that's trumpeting you guys at the moment. Domain's obviously up there, but you guys have got the insights, and sometimes the facts and figures we can't see, but we're hearing on the ground. It's always good to know that it's supported, with the analytics a number of months later. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
No worries.
Anything else, Brad?
I don't know. Any other questions that we want to throw at Amelia?
No. I can't ask any more about the outlook. That was perfect.
So thank you so much for joining us here this morning, Amelia. We do look forward to welcoming you back after the summer season. Maybe we can do a bit of a wrap or something else.
Yeah.
But we'll touch base and get you back on, because it certainly is such a pleasure and so insightful having you on our segment. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to coming back.
Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.